Welcome into the Jackson Post podcast, Behind the Paywall. We're back on our regular night of Sunday Night Live, 9 p.m. We will be covering the July 24th edition of the Jackson Post, which should have been delivered into your mailboxes if you have a physical copy subscription on Friday. Should have had plenty of time to read it. And here we are, Brandon, end of July, hurtling toward August. Let me ask you something. Do you ever get the Sunday Scaries?
What are the
Do you know
Sunday
what the Sunday Scaries are?
No.
Okay. So
I
the
mean,
Sunday Scaries,
I get nervous before Sunday school teaching my 4th and 5th graders sometimes.
I would get nervous about that as well. No, but the Sunday Scaries are that they creep in usually about late afternoon on a Sunday as you kind of start to shift your mindset towards the work week, right? After 2 days of just kind of doing what you want to do. I usually get them every Sunday during the school year. Not usually, every Sunday I get them during the school year. These that I'm feeling tonight are like Sunday Scaries on Hulk Hogan 1980 steroids.
Right?
Because
RIP.
RIP Hulk. I just wanted to work him in there so we could
There you
talk
go.
about that a little bit. But no, this is Sunday Scary. This is summer Sunday Scaries. This is being off for a whole month and then having to go back to work. So man, it is, yeah, there's a lot going on right now.
Here's the closest thing that I got to, well, first off, I have had jobs. Well, I've had a few jobs. I hadn't had many jobs where I usually had the weekends off. So when I was a sports writer, you know, there were very few times where I had 2 days off, much less a Saturday and Sunday. But so the closest thing I got to kind of measure up to that is when we were coming back from COVID and churches didn't meet for about 2 or 3 months in 2020. And then I think it was the first Sunday in June. Hey, we're still going to have the online services, but we're going to open up the worship centers and we're going to be social distancing and all that stuff. So it's like, shoot, got to wake up again and put on pants. I'm not sure if I can do that.
You didn't have to.
Well, yeah, my wife's on staff, so at least she had to. And it would look bad if she went and the other however many we had in the house at the time didn't. And then, but we didn't have Sunday school at the time. I think Sunday school came back in August, maybe for the start of the school year. And it was like, okay, now you got to show up and be here for 2 services. And you've got to have your smile on and be ready to interact with the kids. And introvert Brandon was enjoying not having to. So it took some Sunday scary motivational talk type situations to get in there and stomp out biblical ignorance in these 4th and 5th graders of Medina.
So your Sunday Scaries were like the literal, like they actually occurred on things happening on Sunday, whereas mine are just previewing what's ahead. It's the thought.
But I understand, through that experience, I understand what you're talking about, yeah.
For sure. So I mentioned Hulk Hogan, and we all know by now that he passed away. I'm going to ask you a question before we get into the rundown. Or I saw this on Facebook. There are, I think, like 5 versions of Hulk Hogan, I believe, right? You have your 80s WWF Hogan version. You have your WCW Hogan version. Both of those were the red and gold, right? Then you have your NWO Hollywood Hogan version, which 3. Then you have him going back to the red and gold in WCW, but still keeping the painted on beard with that somehow.
Right.
Then you have him going back to WWE for his last and final run when he sort of like, during that WrestleMania match with Rock, he essentially, it wasn't a double turn, but the crowd turned him back to red and gold. So do you have a favorite version of those Hulk Hogan?
I can't believe you're not going to bring up the 6th Hulk Hogan when he went to TN.
I don't count that.
He and Ric Flair, it was hokey, but it was still entertaining. He and Rick and Sting getting back together.
I didn't even watch it. I didn't watch it. I couldn't do it. It was like, and I knew it was happening, and I was like, I could watch this. I couldn't bring myself to watch it because it was just going to make me sad.
Well, there was like a period of like 2 months there where Sting was quote unquote going crazy and was kind of doing his impression of Heath Ledger's Joker, and just kind of watching all that was hokey, but still it was so bad it was entertaining.
Okay. I just couldn't see my heroes like that though. I don't think.
Yeah. But as far as the first 5 go, so he had that nice match with The Rock at WrestleMania. That was a great moment. And so are you asking which of those versions was my favorite?
Yep.
I guess the NWO one.
That was your favorite one. Well, then let me ask you a follow-up. So if
Yeah.
that's your favorite, which one would you, when someone says Hulk Hogan, which one do you picture?
I mean, you don't have the black and white without the red and yellow. And so, I mean, the 80s WWE, Hulk Hogan, body slamming Andre, going, that iconic look back at WrestleMania 6 after Warrior beating him and he's looking all pouty and stuff. Him taking the fireball from Sergeant Slaughter after the Royal Rumble. I mean, all that's Macho Man at WrestleMania 5. I mean, all that's iconic.
Dude, I remember the storyline on Saturday Night's Main Event when Miss Elizabeth got hurt, shows jealous of Hogan. Hogan carries her back to the locker room. I was watching that live. I was like third or fourth grade, and I was so into it. Like I was like my feelings were hurt that they were like that he and Macho Man were feuding. But when I think of Hogan, I think of the red and yellow in the '80s. But my favorite version too is the NWO
That
Hollywood.
night that you're talking about with Macho Man and Elizabeth, that was my first time ever watching WWE because
Wow.
the cable that I had at the time, if we had WWE, I didn't know where it was. We may not have even had cable at the time, but I still had BCW. And so I was watching, or NWA, whatever was on at the time. So I was watching them. So I knew about Flair and Sting and Luger and all those guys, the Four Horsemen, all those guys. And I had heard of Hogan, but I'd never actually seen him. So then I heard, and I don't think it was Saturday night. I think this was called the main event. It was a Friday night event.
That's right. It was a Friday night. You're right. You're right.
And it was him and Macho Man against Big Boss Man and Akeem. And then at the end of the match, Macho Man's turning on Hogan. I'm like, bro, why are we doing this? That's three of y'all against him. That's not fair, jerks.
A lot like that. That was, I was always an NWA guy first, WCW, whatever. I didn't grow up in the South. It has a lot to do with that. My grandparents would watch Atlanta Braves baseball,
Uh-huh.
and Saturday nights before the Braves game would be
WCW Saturday
NWA,
night.
WCW Saturday night.
Yeah.
And so I'd always just watch that. So that was my first, like, that's who I liked the best. But you couldn't help but not be enamored with like the WWF's presentation of their wrestlers. So yeah, I was never a Hogan fan. Like he was never my favorite wrestler. I never even like necessarily like emotionally bought into that character at all. But
Uh-huh.
I've definitely appreciated what he did. He was very easy to hate for me as whenever he was with the NWO. But I don't think he fit really well with that. I think because he was so well known, the turn is what gave him all that momentum. He
Uh-huh.
was pretty corny in that role, like because he
Yeah.
was trying to be cool, but he is not a cool. He is not naturally cool like Nash and Hall. Like they're
Right.
naturally cool, and he was trying hard, but it worked. Like regardless, it still worked.
You go back and watch those promo clips, and it's like there's no way that dialogue would get by now. Not because it was bad or insensitive or anything like that. It was just really, we were hanging on this man's words when we were 15, 16 years old. What the heck?
You could say he would get lost in his monologue sometimes, and you could just sort of watch him find his way back, like in real time. It's like Chuck Walker on the radio. Just kidding, Chuck. JK. All right, I can look. We better cut this off now because I could keep going, and it seems like we're getting predictable with our opening segments
Well,
here. It's always about wrestling.
this week was a special reason for that, so it's fine.
That's true. All right, here's the rundown for tonight. These are the things we are going to be discussing, time permitting. JEA and how great they are in responding to power outages when things go really sideways with the weather. We had one of those situations recently, and you wrote a really good in-depth piece about what that process is like for JEA, so we're going to discuss that. Our chief, Eric Turner, not to be confused with JCN football coach Eric Turner. I get them confused sometimes. I mean, I don't get them confused, but the names, they sound similar. Fire Chief Eric Turner was named Fire Chief of the Year for the state of Tennessee.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
for the Tennessee Fire Chiefs Association, which I imagine is
Tennessee.
going to be just about all of them.
Right. So we'll discuss that. Congratulations to him, making Jackson look good. Some bad news. We will discuss two shootings that happened last week, and I believe they happened maybe on back-to-back days. One of them, well, both are obviously serious when you have shootings. One caused quite a scene on Old Hickory and the bypass, though, so we'll discuss that. City Services meets with citizens, and there's a lot I want to discuss there. I know we'll get into depth about it whenever we talk about it, but Councilperson Busby essentially set up a kind of meet and greet, more of an informational session with some of city services for her district. So hats off to her. I think more county commissioners, city council people should do that. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. Bounce back basketball camp. I guess that's a sports related story that we will discuss. That happens every year. I believe, does Johnny Dodd over that?
Yeah, and
Or
he's been doing it for at least a decade. Yeah.
right, yeah. So this happens every year. And then if we have time permitting, we will sort of dive into some of the Hub City Central stuff that's kind of been out there floating around. You and I actually have written some pieces about it that aren't yet in the paper, but will be online shortly. So I think it's even though it's not in this edition, it's definitely relevant and worth discussing. So if we have time, we'll get into that. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good to
All
me.
right. So let's start. JEA, I'm going to scroll back up here on my PDF copy, which, by the way, let me give just some subscription information. You can obviously subscribe with the physical edition, but along with your subscription, you can also have access to the PDF file of the paper. It is literally the same as the physical paper, just on your computer screen. So let's talk about your title of this article, Brandon. Do you remember what it was called?
Powerful work or something like that.
I like it. I like it. Did that just come to you? Because that's a pun, but it also, I mean, it works on several levels.
Yeah, I'm trying to. That's one thing that I felt the print edition has been missing. That I'm working with our designers about. Hey, can we not just be just kind of drab?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Well, you're the one who sends us the stuff." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, then I will send you some more stuff, and I will send you directions about what to do with it." So yeah, I mean, that was pretty easy. I forget what I think the one the week before was like seasonal party because I had the main story being the thing at the Ag Research Summer Celebration is what it was actually
Right.
called. So I was like, oh, seasonal party, boom, that works. So yeah, I mean that's just a small touch there,
It's very good.
subtle.
I'm impressed. I'm terrible at thinking of headlines to anything. Like whoever I write for, they're like, "What do you want this to?" I'd have no idea. I can't. Like y'all figure it out. Slap it up
Yeah,
there.
that that's not one of my strengths. The one time when I was a sports writer, sports editor, the one time that I came up with one that I was really proud of was when Peabody High School won their first football state championship, and we went with the headline title TITLE tidal wave. Because they're the Golden Tide.
Yeah,
It's like that's
that's
right,
good. That's
taking
really
that one
good.
home.
So almost 2 weeks ago, on July 15th, there's a big storm that hit North Jackson. Right.
Wasn't even that big of a
It's kind of
storm, but go ahead.
right. Well, it's intense. Let me let
Yeah,
me let me change my modifiers. Hit North Jackson. You're right. It wasn't a prolonged storm, or anything like that. But man, like I remember seeing on social media, people like, everybody was out. And when I say everybody, it looked like 13,000 meters according to your article, and that's almost a third of
that's
the
over a third.
entire county. Over a third, right?
Yeah,
That's 36,000 meters in Madison County, so it's over a third. And Leslie Jones, the vice president of operations at JEA, said that's a very significant outage for us, right? That was the quote there. And so here's how we sort of I want to sort of break down the process here because I think a lot of people don't know how JEA gets their energy. The majority of the energy that they get, or electricity, I guess, comes from the Tennessee Valley Authority, right? Like, would you say roughly 95% of that, maybe more?
my numbers may be off, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood, like almost all of it.
Right.
I mean,
So they
they've got a couple of solar panel fields around here that they get some power from, but I mean, how much power can you get from those for 100,000 residents, 36,000 meters?
so they're essentially buying their energy from TVA and then they're selling it to, for lack of a better word, to us.
Hmm.
So, when people complain, as I have before, about your price of whatever your AC bill is or your heating bill is in January, it's not necessarily JEA creating this electricity and putting their own price on it. They have to go out and get this and then, provide it to us. So how does this work? And I know before we started recording, you wrote this like probably a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. What do you remember about the process? When you were did you talk to Leslie Jones mostly when you were doing this, or?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Monty Cooper for a minute, and then he kind of threw it off on Leslie. So she's the main person to talk to. Of course, I've had conversations like this with Steve Bowers, who's the information person for JEA. So first thing to know is that when you're in downtown Jackson, you're on Highland Avenue. On one side, you've got the downtown walk with the lift and Rock and Doe and that whole area. And then on the other side, you've got this humongous parking lot that everybody thinks belongs to JEA, but it's actually public parking there in downtown Jackson. On one end of the parking lot is the main office building for JEA, but on the other end is a building that is what JEA refers to as its bunker. And that's essentially the nerve center of the entire company, where their call center is. So when you call, hey, my power's out, that's where the phone rings. That somebody's going to pick up and talk to you. That's also where all their monitors are, where they've got all their maps of their areas, and they can see they've got one map over here that's up on the wall with all these lights. And if they're all green, that's a good thing. But if somebody's out, hey, we got an outage over here in this area. Let's go find out what's going on. Let's go fix it. So they got that for electricity, gas, water, and internet. And it's like in this big, almost like a college type classroom where there's different levels, almost like balconies, small balconies. Have you ever been in there before? Okay. The only time I've ever been in there was when we went on a tour back during when I went through Leadership Jackson a few years ago, and we toured the bunker. And so it's like this big room, and it all kind of focuses down on the center, and that's where all the main stuff is going on. But all these levels on days like this is where different groups of leadership and other people can congregate together and have different planning conversations. Here's what we do with this. Here's how we need to attack this problem. This is who we need to send out to go get pizza for everybody. All those conversations. And so when they know that either there's a line of storms coming through or the atmosphere is going to be pretty unstable, they're up. They're aware of it, and a lot of times, I mean, there's always going to be a shift of people always on call. But
That's what I was going to ask.
yeah, but if there's a storm, there's like different levels of, okay, if it's this severe, we'll call these people. If it's this severe or creates this much damage, which is a little more, we'll call all these people. Um, like for instance, storms we had in early April that caused all the flooding and the tornado in Selma and all that stuff. That was one of the few times where they have had to have all hands on deck, because that was a multi-day, almost a continuous storm for like 2 or 3 days. Like we had to have everybody on deck working around the clock for that one. Unfortunately, the one on July 15th was not that bad. It was just, like you said earlier, intense, well-timed. And if the storm had a mind, it knew where to go, and it went there, and it hit hard. And then it was gone. Because I remember that night here in Medina, I mean, lightning flashes all over the place. My dogs were acting like my neighbors were blowing up fireworks again. And it was right at bedtime for the kids. And, the kids were kind of scared about going to bed and stuff. So it was a very memorable storm. But there wasn't, I don't think there was any wind. There wasn't a lot of rain. It was just a lot of flashes and thunders and stuff. And one of the flashes sent a bolt of lightning onto a big substation in Oakfield. There's Oakfield Road that goes from Old Medina Road to Christmasville Road. Usually when I'm going to the ballpark or Liberty Tech High School or somewhere, that's how I cut across. Go a little bit down Old Medina and then turn left, and it takes you by the post office on the northern end of the county. And then you come out on Christmasville, I don't know, a couple of miles from Northeast Middle School. But the substation's off that road. And you take that substation out, and apparently you take out electricity for over a third of the county. And I had a guy tell me the next day that he said he was up in Gibson County before the storm hit, and he was driving back home. He said, I saw a big flash to my left, and then he said I was still in three-way, so it wasn't like he was it wasn't like he was in the middle of Jackson, but he was in a place with lights. He said, then everything goes black. He said, I didn't see light again until I got to the McDonald's in front of Kroger on Orwell. He said that was just an eerie sight. I said, yeah, I could see that.
It's when there are lights out in places where you are used to seeing lights on, right? Because I guess it's one of those things that you don't necessarily notice because, you just get used to it, right? Like it's habituation. Lights are on in a certain, when it gets dark in a certain place, you're used to it. You only notice it when they're not. I remember in 1999, we had one of these really bad tornadoes. One of the, the three bad ones that happened around that time period. I was at church at Calvary out north, and this tornado is the one that hit in 99, like Beach Bluff really hard, and I think downtown as well.
No, downtown was 03, but
03.
99 hit Southside and Beach Bluff. Yeah.
Yeah, but it also hit, there were two houses on Westwood that were demolished.
Oh, okay.
during '99. But I was driving back from church at Calvary, and all electricity is on. But when you cross North Parkway, where the old movie theater was, right there, completely black, and it is an eerie thing when like everything is just blacked out where it's usually not. Back to this one, I believe it was Leslie Jones that said by that night, they were fortunate to have nearly everyone back on within an hour and a half, and everybody back on by midnight. Like
And the
that's
ones
a
they didn't
that's a
have on, go ahead.
no, that I was going to say that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think that just shows how efficient and organized that whole process is.
Yeah. And what made it so long, because it could have been quicker, except for the fact that what was damaged in Oakland was not technically JEA equipment, it was TVA equipment. So they had to essentially bypass it temporarily to get the power back restored instead of just like sending JEA people in there, fix it, and be done with it. Now, I did find out during this interview, I didn't put it in the story, but I didn't realize this. Maybe you knew this. TVA actually has an office in Jackson, and they have some people who live and work here. So during situations like this, they are there to help and aid however they need to. So, but still, the work that they had to do still was going to take a while. So they were able to push a few buttons and rework some things, maybe disconnect some things for a second, and like I said earlier, bypass to get the power restored. And I think it's 95 minutes, all 13,000 customers, and there were still. Leslie said that there were two minor, smaller outages that were going on that night that were unrelated to this one, but those two instances were taken care of by midnight that night.
I will say this, like anytime, and of course, I grew up very close to the hospital. I still live semi close to the hospital, and I don't know if this is an urban legend or what, but my parents always told me we'll get our power back on quick because we're close to the hospital. I don't know if that's accurate or not. That's was one of those things that I heard when I was a kid, so I just believed it. Anytime I've lost power here, other than like just a catastrophe like a tornado, which I was in literally in the one in 2008. Those are the ones that obviously it takes a little bit longer to get your power restored, but for the most part, it's pretty quick. And before we started recording, I was telling you about where my girlfriend Laura lives. They have multiple options for where they get their electricity. That being said, when I was up there earlier this summer, they had a power outage. It took them forever to get it back on. And in my 45 years of living here, the times that I've gone without power have not been very long because of, I guess, the infrastructure that JEA has in place.
Right.
So hats off to them. They seem to have a very organized and efficient system for dealing with weather emergencies. So I know there are times I complain about my electricity bill in the summer and in the winter. That being said, they do a heck of a job at taking care of their customers and the people living in Madison County.
Yeah, I mean it's
So
that the day after that on July the 16th, I mentioned I had one conversation with a person. I went to Rotary that day and everybody was talking about how great they did. They even got a shout out from the actual Rotary meeting itself. So yeah, I felt it was worthy to let them take a victory lap after that quality work that they did. So there you go.
and but it's also, I think it's very important too to like show the public what the process is,
Right.
because when lights go out, normally the only thing people are thinking about is like, when can I get my internet back on, or my AC if it's in July. And so a lot of times they're probably not thinking about what the process is to get that back on. So
Or the fact
good
that
job explaining that.
to get your electricity back on or to get your internet restored, somebody is having to leave their home at 8:40, 9 o'clock at night when they were probably getting ready to go to bed, or at least winding down binge watching the Office that they've seen 27 times already.
You're talking about yourself.
Yeah, to
Me too.
to reconnect so you can keep watching those binge episodes. So yeah, thanks to all those people, and yeah, I'll probably go ahead and start referring to them with first responders too, because they may not be directly saving lives like a firefighter or a policeman or an EMS worker, but when there's a storm, they're on the front line too. They just may not be on the middle of the front lines fighting the main battles.
Yeah. And hey, huge shout out to people that are on call, by the way, because that's a life that's not fun to live. I did that for a year. I was on call when I did social work. Only had a couple times where I got a call when I was already kind of settled in for the night, and Oh, it's frustrating. I was married at the time, and my wife was a nurse, and she was on call a lot. So, I think she had like a weekend a month where it's like, hey, you're on call, so we couldn't go out of town. And, it's just, so you're sort of, whoa, you're sort of stuck. Even if you don't have to go in, you're limited in what you can do. So hats off to people who are on call. Well, yeah, your dog's getting fired up.
That's the big dog, and she's apparently too ignorant to figure out who is sitting over here. Hopefully, they're hearing my voice now and they're calming down.
She sounds big. All right. Chief Eric Turner was named Fire Chief of the Year by the Tennessee Fire Chiefs Association. And here's something that I did not know. He has nearly 40 years of service. I
Yeah,
did
he
not
looks
know
like
that.
he's 40 years old now.
Right. That's what I was going to say. I was like, did I read that right?
Also, in connection with something you said earlier, talking about confusing Eric Turner, who's a JCM head football coach, and Eric Turner. Back in April, I sent a group text to Jason Moore, Madison County's EMA director, and I thought
Mm-hmm.
Fire Chief Eric Turner asking about how roads were and stuff during the flooding in that first weekend of storms that we've already referenced once or twice already this podcast. And about 3 hours later, I'm like, man, Chief Turner, he must be working hard. He hasn't responded back, but Jason Moore had. And then I go and look at the text. I'm like, hold on a second, check it. And sure enough, I had texted your football coach, Gabe, asking how the roads were, but I'm still waiting on him to respond to me. He never told me how the
I bet
roads
he
were
was
either.
like, he probably looked at it and said, got no time for this.
That's exactly what he said, I'm sure.
Eric and Eric, I feel like they should switch roles for one day. I just want to just let Eric Turner coach a Friday night and then let Eric Turner, well, I don't know what you do as a fire chief I mean, organize I have no idea what goes into that job. Do
Yeah,
you?
it's organizing and a lot of recruiting. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
the jobs are probably a lot more similar than what we
Yeah.
give them credit for. Yeah, the Tennessee Fire Chiefs Association had their annual conference couple of weeks ago. I'm assuming in Nashville. If not Nashville, probably Memphis, Knoxville, or Chattanooga. Maybe Murfreesboro.
Maybe summer.
Maybe Selmer. Yeah. Um, Gleason. Those edit those last 15 seconds out. Uh, but um, yeah. But at the end, when they give the top award, Fire Chief of the Year, uh, Eric was the one who got it, and I think this was the second time he's won the award. Um, so he knows what he's doing. And this is just more recognition of that fact. And just knowing just in the last 12 months what this fire department has accomplished and gotten done. I mean, they were heavily involved in the recovery and rescue efforts in East Tennessee after Hurricane Helene. The remnants stayed on top of Tennessee and North Carolina and washed out a big chunk of homes in that region. I think twice in the first few months of this year, they sent their rescue crew up to Obion County to rescue people from flood areas, particularly in the Reeves community, Rives. My apologies if I mispronounced that community name wrong. And then just doing the work here. And, if you're listening to us live, it was 24 hours ago that the Gerdau fire was going on, and they put out a statement earlier today that they answered the call at like 7:35 on Saturday night, and that fire was not put out until 7:25 in the morning.
12 hours. That looked insane from the pictures I saw.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't go out there because I had a bunch of babies home by myself while the wife had the older kids out back to school shopping. I plan on reaching out to Gerdau this week for a possible story, and and I imagine that was a typical fire that they have on their premises. It was just bigger than what it was supposed to have been. But to deal with everything that they've dealt with, multiple firefighters had to be treated for dehydration. One firefighter was apparently injured, taken to the hospital, and I guarantee you that unless he was out of town, not able to be there, Chief Turner was right in the middle of it because when he's at a fire, you can't tell who the chief is. Because
Oh, that's awesome.
for most fire departments, the chief's going to be standing at the back at a truck in a white shirt and a tie, getting ready to talk to the media or whoever needs to be talked to. No, he's in there with his axe and his water hose, kicking butt, taking names, and getting all the people and the dogs out before they burn up.
It says in the piece that he began as a 16-year-old as a volunteer firefighter. And I just want to read one quote that's really going to sort of sum up what you just said, too. And this is from the post that the fire department made. It says, since
Yes.
then, he, Chief Turner, has transformed Madison County Fire into a thriving combination department, launched our respected Special Operations Division, and served as a hands-on servant leader, always leading from the front, whether in the office or on the fire ground, like you said. So there you go. And that's impressive. And I think that's really, if you're going to be a leader, that's the way you have to do it. I think you've got to be sort of in the mix with everybody.
And I will
Hats
say,
off to Chief Turner.
yeah, and Chief Turner, he's the one that's getting the flowers right now because he won this award. But I was thinking the other day, and there may be people who disagree with me, but I really feel like in the city and the county, at least in the leadership, Sheriff Weiser, Chief Turner, Chief Corley for Jackson Police, Chief Riddle with Jackson Fire, and all their leadership teams, we don't have anybody that is an obvious weakness right now in this area. And Jackson and Madison County need to be appreciative of that.
Yep. I would agree. I would agree. All right. Next story. Kind of bringing it down a little bit. We had two positive ones, so let's balance this out, I guess. We had two shootings. And this is, I know a few weeks ago we talked about JPD releasing their crime numbers. It just, it's one of these things that with social media, you hear about things when they happen, whether you want to or not, like if
Right.
you're on social media. So, I'm always asking myself, are there more shootings or am I just hearing about shootings more? And, it's just one of those things where it does seem like they're happening a lot, even though I know one of these was in the county, one was in the city. So we'll start with the one that was in the city. This was the one that happened on Old Hickory in the middle of the afternoon, like 4 or 4:30, something like that. 3:30 it says on July 17th. Um, I don't know. I'm sort of reading through it. It sounded like it started out as a road rage incident. It started out with someone showing a gun
Mm-hmm.
to someone else, and that person called the police. And when they tracked it down, the weapon was discharged, and an officer discharged their weapon, and someone ended up dead. So you happened to pass by there,
Mm-hmm.
correct? What
Yeah.
was that scene like when you passed by?
So apparently, I passed by like right after it happened. After the call came in, I'd been at Union University because the Logos Library seconds as the Jackson Post newsroom. So I'd been getting some stuff written that afternoon, and then I was headed south to the CJC for Judge Hugh Harvey's retirement ceremony. And I go by Old Hickory, and there was one or two cop cars with their lights on that I saw down toward Old Hickory as I was coming down from the interstate. But that's a typical thing that you see in Jackson. So I'm like, okay, there's a wreck somewhere, or there's a call or somewhere where they're going. Not a big deal. And then as I'm going through the red light at Old Hickory, there are two or three cars that are blocking off both directions of traffic. And thought about stopping. And the reason why I didn't was one, it was hot. But the real reason is because they don't usually give a lot of information at these things. So I went on to the retirement ceremony. But before I got to Airways Boulevard on the bypass, I had passed met 9 more cops with their lights on, headed toward the incident. So there for a second, I don't even want to voice what I thought had happened and that I was going to be writing about after that. Fortunately, it wasn't. But yeah, so there was an officer involved shooting. There were two shots. One shot came from the person in the vehicle. The second shot came from a police officer. The person in the vehicle was hit by one of them, taken to, I think, flown to Memphis, where that person later died. If TBI is investigating it, if they have figured out which bullet hit the person and killed them, they have not announced that yet. But I think that's the
So they're
main.
looking at it. Yeah, they don't know whether it was a self-inflicted gunshot or it came from when the officer discharged their weapon.
Right.
Correct. That's what they're waiting on.
Right.
regardless, it's and again, all we do is we talk about the news, no opinions, limited opinions, whatever. But man, it is it's unsettling when it doesn't matter if it's 3:30 in the afternoon or 3:30 in the morning when someone is driving down the road and flashes a handgun to someone else. Like that's very unsettling. And again, this is it's not like this happens all the time and everybody's just rolling around holding up their pieces if cut them off on the bypass. This is sort of an anomaly in that regard. That being said, still, man, still a bit unsettling. The other shooting unsettling for another reason, because these were two juveniles who were arrested after a homicide that happened 2 days after the one that we were just talking about. This happened on, I believe, July 19th. Um, and this seemed to have, I shouldn't say gotten solved quicker, but they apprehended the suspects in a timely fashion, and they were both under the age of 18. The victim, Cameron Walker, age 24, and this happened on Hartsbridge Road. What do you know about that? What can you tell us about that one?
Well, I did see,
Anything?
the photo that goes with that story. I drove by there and got that photo myself, and I'm not going to give the name, but it looks like it happened in a church parking lot, based on the information given from the press release from JPD. And I haven't heard about any kind of confession from either the juveniles or anything like that. They're not going to give a lot of information because they are juveniles, they being JPD. So
Wait, was this JPD or was this Sheriff's Department? This
I'm
was Sheriff's
sorry.
Department.
Yes, it was Sheriff, but
Okay.
JPD did help. But yeah, Sheriff Weiser, he's good about when they're done talking. When he's done talking, that entire department is done talking, and so no more information about that has come out since then.
Yeah, so you had these sort of two in the same week, like, and it's one of those things where you don't ever want to get used to something like this, but it almost seems like we kind of get used to stuff like this.
Well, it's almost like we have them in rashes too. I mean, we had
Yeah.
4 or 5 people who were shot and killed in the month of January. I think it was 4 shootings. One of the fatalities was a pregnant mother, so that counts as 2 right there. Then we go a few months, and then we have the shooting at Kate Campbell Park, and I think there were 1 or 2 others. Yeah, the one at Old Hickory early the next morning, Memorial Day weekend, and then we've had these, and I don't know if you can, not that crime wise that any of these shootings are linked to each other, but it's almost like, can you somehow mentally, in the subconscious of a human, one person in a city shoots a gun, and then maybe that's got that on the mind of somebody else, and it kind of causes them to feel a little more free to shoot another gun, a little while later. I don't know about that, but it's just intriguing how, in fact, I remember going to an event at JPD headquarters back in the spring before Memorial Day weekend. And I said something not to Chief Corley, but to one of the members of the leadership team. I was like, have we not had any shootings in a while? Like, or have y'all just stopped sending out press releases? And the person's like, we haven't had any incidents, so please don't jinx us by saying anything. I was like, my bad. I didn't realize we were trying to preserve a no hitter here. Um, but yeah, it's different, and I'm like you. I hope we never get used to this. I hope the city of Jackson and the people don't get used to it, and they don't. And I hope they get to a point where they won't stand for it anymore, and everybody says, "Hey, let's put the guns down. Let's stop shooting. If we've got a difference with somebody, we've got fists." And most of the time, if we just use our fists, which I'm not advocating fist fighting, but if you have to settle a difference, most of the time both people can walk away from a fist fight. So put your guns down and fight it out like men.
Fight it out like men
Yeah.
with your hands, like
And then
Hulk
drop a leg
Hogan.
drop. Yeah, drop the leg.
Man, yeah, like I agree, and I know I've said this quote multiple times, either on the radio or even on here. I talked to an officer who's no longer. He was with both the sheriff's department and the city police department. Now doesn't even live in Tennessee anymore. He's gone out of
Yeah.
state. But he told me, he said that nowadays kids, I shouldn't say kids, but young adults, they'll shoot each other over what we used to fight over. He said things that we would, whenever I was in high school or whatever, And I'm not trying to glorify fighting because that's such, such a Neanderthal way of looking at things. And I'm not advocating for that either. But that's what he said. And look, I'm sure you've been in a fight before, Brandon. I've been in a few because when you're young and you're dumb, you do dumb things, and so that did happen. Like I've been in fights. I've gotten beat up, and every now and then I got lucky and handed to somebody else. But he was saying that what those situations that we fought over now, rather than fighting, it's a drive-by or somebody will just pull out a gun and shoot. And I'm not saying they don't think a lot about it, but that's just sort of the response. And I don't know. That's a sort of a sad state of affairs if that's where we are.
One other thing that I do want to add before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any more questions about this? Okay. Some people have asked, and so I'll go ahead and explain for anybody watching this why my byline is not usually on these stories is because, like I was kind of talking about earlier, when I was giving my first person account of what I saw on Old Hickory, JPD and the sheriff's department will both. They're both good about putting out press releases when something happens, particularly stuff that ends up with somebody dying. And the first full year that the Post was open, I had a second news writer with me, Julia Ewalt, or Julia Stokesbury now, good friend of yours and mine. And she covered the courts and crimes really well for us. But when it's me by myself, I'm going to do what I can. But a lot of that is relying on what's going to be released by our organizations. Now, I may do like issue type stories like, hey, we've had a rash of 7 shootings in the last 3 days. Corley, can you or somebody on your staff talk to me about that? I may do that, but I'm not going to go out and to every shooting scene and wait for 3 hours for a statement. There was a shooting. We cannot. This is an active investigation, so we can't say anything else. So you're going to see a lot of staff reports on those stories when there's something that somebody feels is worth calling a press conference for. If I can be at the press conference, I'm going to be there, and I'll ask questions and cover the story from that angle. But if I had my way, we would hire tomorrow a sports writer, but then we would hire on Tuesday a news writer to cover crimes in courts and criminal justice, all of that. So, but until we get to that point, this is what you got: me and staff reports.
That's all right. No, staff reports are good. I get it. It would be amazing to have yes, someone to just cover that. But I, I think everyone appreciates, even if it is staff reports, that information getting out there because
Mm-hmm.
people I do think need to know
Yeah,
when
and I
things
do
like that happen.
appreciate both organizations being more open with getting that information out there because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when Weiser was at JPD, he didn't want to tell anybody anything. And if you weren't at the scene of a shooting and you didn't get what he said at the shooting, then you just weren't going to get it. So I appreciate the fact that he's kind of more understanding and working with the media a little better. So
Well, he's got somebody designated too, right? Didn't Jeff Walt? Isn't that his position over there?
I'm not sure if he's the one who's actually writing the press releases.
Okay,
I'm sure him or Weiser are definitely giving them a look and approving them before they go out.
gotcha.
Commissioner Wall is director of operations. So that may mean that he's
Okay.
also doing press releases too. I don't know.
I don't know why I thought that, but I know Stephanie Graham at JPD does a fine job.
Uh-huh.
I think she does really well, and I like the way that they are communicating with the public.
Yeah.
All right, on to some more positive news. City service directors meet with citizens. Councilmember Candace Busby asked the Financial Empowerment Center Director Tyler Carr and neighborhood specialist Elvia Trejo, I hope I pronounced that correctly, to come to her district and meet with constituents and just sort of explain what these programs do. And I think this is important for a couple reasons. One, I think elected officials should do this way more than they do. So shout out to Councilmember Busby for doing that, for sort of bringing the information to the people. Because, regular people, we don't have time to get to like city council meetings or county commission meetings. Like we're working at 9 o'clock in the morning. So a lot of times I don't think people know the services that the city provides. And I think it's important for a second reason, because with all the budget hoopla that happened with the city recently, these programs, I don't want to say they were on the chopping block, but there were questions about these programs. There just were. How the money was spent, are they necessary, and blah, blah, blah. I will say this personally. I wrote a story about Love Your Block in the neighborhood improvement part of the city. The work they do is incredible. It's a freaking bargain for whatever tax money's going to it. It's crazy. I borrowed a pressure washer from their mobile tool shed last week and used it myself, took it back. Like the process was so easy. And I don't want to like spoil the entire thing before you start talking. But just getting that information out there to the public, I think, is so necessary. So great job by Councilperson Busby for doing that. You were at the meetings. Did you find out?
Well, I mean, there wasn't really any new information for me out there because I've heard both of these presentations a number of times. Tyler Carr just kind of said, hey, the Financial Empowerment Center is here. It's actually in multiple cities throughout West Tennessee, but the city of Jackson is paying for the FEP in Jackson. But anyone who just needs any help with counseling or with finances in the city of Jackson can ask for it. Ask for help, whether it's, hey, I just lost my job, or I lost my job, I got another job, but it doesn't pay as much, so I need to figure out how to budget my new amount of revenue, trying to work your way out of a financial hole that a series of decisions over years or less has put you in this hole. They can sort of figure out how to dig out and increase credit scores too. So Tyler Carr and Jordan Howerton were both there to discuss that. And like you said, Ovia and Abby Pearson were there to discuss Love Your Block and the mobile tool shed where you got the pressure washer from. And one misunderstanding about probably both of these programs, but definitely Love Your Block and Mobile Tool Shed. Love Your Block started in 2021 or 2021, 20 or 21. Um, and when it was first started, it started with a grant, and the grant said they could only help citizens in East Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
That's not true anymore. It is for all 9 districts of Jackson, from Bemis to Ashport Road, or whatever the northern border is of Jackson, and from East Jackson to Industrial Park, where Georgia Pacific is. So anybody that needs help can apply for help from Love Your Block. Anybody that needs access to the mobile tool shed can call City Hall or contact City Hall and get that access if they're in the city of Jackson. So yeah, Councilperson Busby, she set up one of those informational sessions. Now I know about 8 other city council members that should do the same thing for their constituents and their districts. And both of them, both Trejo and Carr, said they'd be more than willing to go talk to whoever they got to talk to get the word out about both of these things.
They're really good. They're really good services that the city provides. So yeah, I hope they can go to every district and talk about it. And just a plug here for myself, honestly, and our Jackson home. A full story about Love Your Block and sort of the history of that and what they do will be out in this quarter's journal, which will be released this Thursday, July 31st at 731 Day at Hub City Brewing. So
Dude, there was a
anyway,
story about
that's
that
that.
in the paper. Why aren't we discussing that?
Well, I don't. Well, because I just did. I just wrapped it in here.
There we
Just
go.
wrapped it in.
Yeah.
So yeah, 731 Day. And real quick about that, it's Porch Fest. There is no Porch Fest on 731 Day this year. That's been moved back to September because of heat. Uh, Very smart decision, by the way, because man, the last few years have been brutal for Porch Fest. So anyway, so come out Thursday night, get a copy of the journal. It's free. Hang out, see some people. Anyway, I love our Jackson home. I think it's a very special thing that's good for the community. And again, like I said, it's free. Something else that's good for the community and free is the Bounce Back Camp, where children can learn about hoops and life. And that is City Councilman Johnny Dodd. He's been doing this for at least, well, it looks like the last 15 years. Nope, that's not right. He's been doing it at least for a decade, filling this
And
gap.
I know for a fact it's at least a decade. I mean, I imagine he didn't have one in 2020, but maybe 21. But with the exception of that, I mean, when I was still a sports writer, he was doing it, and I moved over in 17.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so at least 8 years, and so yeah, it's just a chance for kids in the city of Jackson, and it's not just limited to his district or just East Jackson. With it being at the TR White Sportsplex, there have been times where it's been at a Liberty Tech. I want to say may have been at Southside one year or JCM. Anyways, maybe even Omen Arena one year. But it's been at different places, and I was there for the first 30 or 45 minutes of I think it's a 4 hour camp. And Jalen Barford was there, Southside legendary figure in Southside basketball history, one of the leaders on those really good teams they had about 12 years ago that won a state championship. And Jeremy Simmons was also there, the girls basketball coach at JCM, Cougar alum. So the two of them had a nice little Southside JCM rivalry thing going on. I'll give Simmons credit. He made JCM look relevant in a basketball rivalry between Southside and JCM, even though they're really not right now. That's right. I went there.
Wait a second. We went to state. What are you talking about?
Yeah, when was the last time y'all
Talking
beat
about girls
Southside? I'm just talking JCM Southside in
and
general.
girls.
But either one. Did
Oh,
JCM beat
I don't
Southside
know.
boys a couple years ago when Southside boys were down? They might have.
Went to
They might have.
overtime. I think Southside beat us at
Okay.
JCM. It was very close. It was very close. I don't remember this year's games. I really don't.
They might have been
I should,
competitive, but
but I
Southside won.
don't. They did. They won. It's all right. We went to state though.
Okay.
I guess Southside went to state as well.
They did. Now they both went one and done, but they both still went to state. So, anyways, yeah, but it was a good thing. While I was there, Chief Corley with JPD, he kind of spoke about staying safe and being good sportsmanship or having sportsmanship while at the camp. And then Councilman Dodd talked about how he was going to have some other people come in and talk. 2 or 3 that I wish I had the ability to stick around for and listen to were people who had overcome drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and a fentanyl overdose. Usually you don't come back from a fentanyl
Right.
overdose, or at least we don't hear about. I mean, fentanyl overdoses typically sound fatal. Maybe they're not as fatal as I think they are, or automatically fatal as I think they are. So a lot of really good messages, or a lot of informative messages for the kids that you may be uncomfortable hearing that the kids are hearing about that, but maybe that's what they need to hear. And if they do,
Well,
they heard it.
I noticed it was ages 6 to 16, so for sure for the older kids they got to hear about it. 6-year-old, maybe, but maybe not. I mean, can't hurt. So I don't know if we're right at an hour right now. An hour 3 minutes. So do you want to get into the Hub City Central discussion, or do you want to wait for next week when we have our pieces in the paper?
I feel like we could be pushing it to a full hour and a half by the time we're done discussing it.
Mm-hmm. I do too. And I'm open to discussing it.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to discuss it. It's just, are we going to do it tonight or next week?
Let's
I'm okay with
let's do
pushing
it
it
tonight.
back. Oh, we're going to do it tonight. All
Okay,
right,
let's push
go.
it back. No, let's push it back. Well, no, let's push it back because think I do think we will not scoop ourselves, but I know what I'm going to say is essentially what I wrote. And you'll probably say the same thing. How about we do this? Let's do a teaser. Let's do where you land on this situation, like with the back and forth about should JCM's name be on the field or not, and then I'll say where I land on it, and then we won't go into any detail about it. We'll save that for next week.
Okay.
How about that?
All right.
Okay. So just real quick before you say where you land on it, let me just set it up. Hub City Central, everybody knows that's been in process for almost 2 years now, and it's very close to being done. JCM will more than likely play a football game, a home game on that field this season. May not be the first game, probably won't be the first game, but more than likely they will get on the field this season.
The latest date that I'm hearing on it is the first week of October.
Right. That's sort of been kind of the target date for the last 6 months, at least, of what we've been hearing. So they will more than likely get on that field. The turf is laid. The end zone lettering is in. The issue for some people, according to social media, was that JCM's name is not on there. So there have been more than a few people who have been a little bit perturbed by that. So where do you land on it?
Everybody on both sides, I haven't heard an opinion that isn't logical and valid from either side. So I haven't just heard anything outlandish. I guess the closest thing to outlandish is the notion that JCM or Marlon King woke up one morning and said, how can we screw JCM? Ooh, I know. Let's build them a $30 million football stadium and then not paint it green and gold.
Are people saying that? Have you heard? Has someone said that they think that he did that on purpose?
No, they didn't. They're not. Nobody's saying that he did that, but there is a notion out
Okay.
there that JCM is being slighted again. And so the point of my column is, and your column, my column is very similar, but I take more of a look at the process behind it from JCM's or JMCSS's perspective. Because a year from now, the central office should have been moved to the old Madison County or Madison Academic / Jackson High building. It's going to be called CAB, Central Administration Building, because Dr. King's got to
I
have
love an acronym.
acronyms. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Also, a year from now, Omen Arena will be renovated and online as a fully serviced event center for the entire district. In fact, during committee meetings this week, and I texted Dr. King to check to make sure before I put it in this column for public consumption, and he reiterated, we will have graduations at Omen Arena this in May. So that's going to be a district facility. So central office, Omen Arena, and then we got the stadium. And the stadium is going to be a district facility in the spring for track and field because Southside don't have track and field, Northside don't have track and field. Liberty's got a track, but no one wants to run on it because you can only get 6 people on it instead of 8. So the whole district for track meets that count are going to happen at Hub City Central. So it makes sense from their perspective to not have JCM branding all over that stadium. But, and here's the only thing that I'll say, or the most drastic thing that I'll say in favor of the people who are hating on the district. To a certain extent, Southside, Northside, and Liberty's facilities are JMCSS facilities too. Case in point, all 3 of those football stadiums in the last 2 years have hosted JCM football games. But nobody said a word about, well, we got to repaint these facilities because JCM's going to play here. No, JCM just had to play with blue and gold all over one building. They had to play their homecoming with black and white 2 years ago all over Southside's building while hosting Northside for homecoming. So, and then they got ready for other games in the dungeon at Liberty and walked out on a maroon pathway on the concrete from the field house to the field. So nobody said, "Whoa, let's call this a JCMS facility and let's paint it black and yellow like they've got in the end zones." But when I was talking about the issue itself with a person in the district that didn't want to be quoted in the column, they said, "Who's to say that we can't paint it later?" I said, "Well, that's a good point. And JCM is nothing if they're not adaptable, or JMCSS is nothing if they're not
Man,
adaptable."
well, same for JCM. No,
Well,
no, yeah, and I'm not gonna go in probably into as much depth as you did. I think where I land as a JCM alum, as a JCM employee currently,
yeah,
is I completely understand both sides of it, and I think this is a really good opportunity for people in general just to look at a situation and recognize that two opposing ideas can both be true at the same time, and the world doesn't have to end. And Hub City Central is going to be freaking amazing regardless of what color it is. So even if a group of people are upset, they're going to be okay and they're going to reap the benefits of whatever this is going to be. And also, it's okay for them to be upset. Like I don't think anybody has done necessarily anything wrong in this. The people who are upset aren't
no,
wrong. The school system sure as heck isn't wrong because they're like what they're providing is incredible. So I don't know. I think what I saw on social media, what made me sort of like what ended up being a column, which I didn't intend for it to be a column, but what ended up being a column was just sort of watching how and I feel like it's a microcosm for everything that goes on right now in our culture. When two groups disagree on something, it's all or nothing. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Like both of these things can happen and it's going to be fine. Like everybody's going to benefit from this. And it's okay if a group feels slighted for a little bit. They're going to find out that it's going to work out in their favor in the end, right? So I think it's okay for them to be a little bit upset and everybody's going to move on and it's going to be a transformative project for the city. So we'll get into more depth about it next week because I'm sure that whatever I wrote is going to be taken out of context by somebody at some point. So I'll have to like
it
clean
always
that mess
does.
up. It always does. I'll have to clean that mess up next weekend. So, but yeah, I'm excited about it regardless.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it'll happen in September. We don't have to wait till October for it to happen, and we get that first game under the JMCSS lights. I do want to ask one question of JMCSS leadership. Every bit of branding for JMCSS is mostly blue, like the logo is blue. And I guess maybe more times than not, when the leadership and the school board wears the same clothes, most of the time that's purple. So what made them decide on yellow and black for the end zones? So yeah, I'll be asking that question.
Aaron Rodgers signing with the Steelers. That's it. That's what it.
That,
That's what it was.
that's got to be what it is. Probably Dr. King
That's
went in there and said, "Now you all,
yeah.
Aaron Rodgers is going to Pittsburgh."
It's got to
So
be a black and gold end zone. Mm-hmm. That's look. That's how I'm digesting all of this. I'm like, hey, go Steelers. Give me a terrible towel. I got to go buy one before September. All right, man. We're clocking in at about an hour 15, and I got first day of school tomorrow.
yeah, we
Womp
should
womp.
probably
So
cut this off and head for the bed.
right. Yep. All right, buddy. I appreciate it. We covered a lot of ground tonight.
Yeah,
It was a good one.
yeah, this is good. This is good. Appreciate it.
I will see you next week.
See y'all.
Yeah. See y'all.